On today's show, if I had to rate how the Cavs front office did this offseason, what would I give it between 1 and 10? We'll talk about that, plus the plan for Lonzo Ball and how does this become Evan Mobley's team on both ends of the floor? We'll discuss all that and so much more in this mailbag edition of Locked On Cavs.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? My name's Danny Cunningham, and you might know me from my time covering the Cleveland Cavaliers, places like my Substack, The Inside Shot, Cleveland Magazine, 92.3 The Fan, and a number of other stops along the way. And I just want to say thank you to you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, or anywhere else. Would very much appreciate it if you went ahead and subscribed wherever you do get your podcasts. And if you're watching the show on YouTube, do us a favor. Hit that thumbs up button for us, click subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest from us here over at Locked On Cavs, a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Football season upon us. And right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets. That's right, $300 in bonus bets if that first $5 bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com today to get started. Mailbag episode of Locked On Cavs today as we grow closer to training camp. We are less than a month away from training camp. Media Day is set for September 29th with training camp opening up at IMG Academy in Bradenton, Florida on Tuesday, September 30th. Very excited for all that to get to, but you guys had a lot of great questions that were sent my way via comments on YouTube or social media, or even some emailers that got in on the fun. So I want to dive into those. And the first one comes from Ed. And he asked, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the best, 1 being the worst, what number do you give Cavs management for their offseason efforts at roster building? And I think that this is kind of an interesting one to look at, because it would be easy for me to sit here and say, oh, they get like a 9 because they do have one of the best rosters in basketball. Like, you look at what Oklahoma City has, you look at what Denver has, you look at what Houston has, and Oklahoma City I would put ahead of them. But there's not another team that I look at in the NBA and say, yeah, that team is a better roster than the Cavs. I don't know that there's a case that they have the best roster in basketball, because as I mentioned, I think Oklahoma City does. But I also don't know that there's a case that they don't have a top 5 roster. I think that there's a stronger case that they have the second best roster behind Oklahoma City than there is they have the number 5 roster in basketball. They're probably somewhere in the middle there. It depends how you feel about Denver, I think. But they are, in my opinion, a top 3 roster in basketball. So it would be theoretically easy for me to say, well, they get a 9 or they get a 10 because they have built this great team. And that is true. Now, if you want to dial it into this specific off season, I think as you judge this, you have to look at, well, what did they do? Which obviously they traded Isaac Okoro for Lonzo Ball. They signed Larry Nance Jr. to a veteran minimum contract. They signed Sam Merrill to a long-term contract, a new contract, and they allowed Ty Jerome to walk to the Memphis Grizzlies in free agency, where he signed a 3-year, $27 million deal with Memphis. And then, of course, they also drafted Tyrese Proctor and Sal Niang, 2 moves that Niang obviously will have 0 impact on the Cavs this year. And I would be surprised if Tyrese Proctor has a big impact, just because mid to late second round picks very rarely have a big impact on a really, really good championship contending team as a rookie. So I think it's fair to say we're not expecting him to do much this year. So we look at the moves that the Cavs actually made this offseason versus what else could they have done. Like, that is why I am going to give them a good grade here, not necessarily because everything they did was perfect. And obviously there were organizations out there, some that I've already listed, that had much splashier off seasons because those teams needed to make a lot of moves. The Cavs didn't need to go out and make a ton of moves. They won 64 games. Yes, they failed in the postseason, but they're still a really, really good team. And they didn't have the flexibility to go out and do so too. Like, that is the other thing. Could the Cavs have done anything differently in the free agent market? I don't think so. I don't know what player out there that signed for the league minimum is better than anything the Cavs got. Now, the Cavs, of course, will have to sign somebody else at some point to a minimum contract, I would presume, because they have 13 guys on the roster and they need to get to 14. But who out there signed for a minimum that you look at and say, man, the Cavs really should have added that guy? I just don't know that that player exists. And I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, Larry Nance Jr. is the best player in the NBA that's on a minimum contract, because I don't know if that's true or not. But I also don't know of one that would have been a better fit for what the Cavs want to do, for how the Cavs have built this roster. Like, I look at that and say, one, he is a really good player on a minimum. I know that there were teams that were interested in him that could have offered him more. I don't know if those offers were ever actually made, but I think from what I've gathered, I do think that Larry Nance Jr. passed up on some money to come back to Cleveland. I don't know how much, but I do think that he passed up on some money to be on the Cavs. And that tells me, okay, well, that right there is a win. The fact that the Cavs have now a legitimate backup center that can not only play backup center, but also can play alongside Jared Allen as a 4 is a really good thing. That to me is one of the best bargain signings of the summer. And then I like the Sam Merrill re-signing. I don't know that I love it. I think that that might be a little bit steep for Sam, but ultimately I look at that and say, okay, how many guys currently, and I have done this episode before, did it this summer, how many guys currently on the deals that they are on will finish those contracts on the Cavs? Sam Merrill might not. And part of the reason why he might not is I think that's a very tradable contract. It's never going to be a bad contract because Sam has a very desired skill set, being a movement shooter, and is good on both ends of the floor. That's not something that's going to be difficult to move. So I look at that and say, okay, well, that's a very good move. The Isaac Okoro for Lonzo Ball trade was, I think, yes, and it comes with a risk because Lonzo Ball has not been able to stay healthy over the most recent parts of his career. I have to say that every time we talk about Lonzo Ball, and I understand why. But I was stunned that the Cavs were able to trade Isaac Okoro and not have to attach any draft compensation to him because he still has 2 years and $22 million remaining on his contract, where Lonzo Ball is a cheaper, shorter contract, and the Cavs didn't have to attach draft compensation. I think that he is, in a vacuum, a better basketball player. Now, the game of basketball is not played in a vacuum, but he does do more things, and he's a two-way player versus a one-way player that Isaac Okoro was, if he can stay on the floor and if he can stay healthy. And if he doesn't, well, the Cavs can get out of it because there's a team option for next year. Even if they pick that option up, he's still cheaper than what Isaac Okoro would be. So I do look at that and say, well, the Cavs won kind of all the moves I think that they made this summer. Now, the thing that maybe could have pushed them up a notch, because I do think I'm going to give them an 8 here to answer the question, Ed. The thing that could have pushed them up is finding a way to retain Ty Jerome as well. I think that Ty is somebody that can be difficult to play in the postseason. Like I thought against the Indiana Pacers, for how bad he was offensively, he's just not a good defender. And that I do think was part of the Cavs' plans this summer was to become more of a two-way team. Ty Jerome is not a two-way player. And it is difficult to have role players that are not two-way players. So I do look at that and say, well, in a perfect world, could they have kept Ty Jerome? Sure. But ultimately, I think if there was one guy that had to go, for as good as he was during the regular season, and even that first round series against Miami Heat, where he was very, very good, for as good as he was, I think that he's the guy that if you had to part with somebody that wouldn't necessarily hurt the chances of the team in the postseason, Ty Jerome's probably that guy. Now, part of it is the guys in the backcourt need to stay healthy. Donovan Mitchell needs to stay healthy. Darius Garland needs to stay healthy in the playoffs because those guys weren't healthy. And if they're not healthy, I don't care who the backup point guard is, Lonzo Ball, Ty Jerome, anyone else that is like backup caliber, you're not going to have success. You need your stars to stay healthy. So I do look at this and say, well, I think ultimately, if somebody from that roster that was a key contributor needed to leave, I think that's the area where that's the guy that the Cavs could kind of survive not having him on the team next season. So ultimately, I will give the Cavs an 8. I think they did a lot of really good things. I like their offseason. They might take a small step back during the regular season this year. They won 64 games last year. I think winning 64 plus games this year, probably not going to happen. But I do think they'll still be the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. And I think most importantly, they are better set up to go on a postseason run with the roster that they currently have. That is something that is very important. Now, Evan Mobley, he is, in my opinion, the team's identity defensively. What does he need to do to become the team's identity offensively? We'll dive into that. Plus, is a breakout year for Jalen Tyson on the way? That's straight ahead right here on Locked On Cavs. Today's show brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season, well, it's here. I'm actually recording this. It is currently 10:14 Eastern time, Thursday night, and there's a football game that is currently being played. The Philadelphia Eagles are leading the Dallas Cowboys right now, 24-20. I have no idea how this game is going to turn out. I don't know, but I can tell you it's going on right now. And you can bet on football tonight because there's a game on Friday night. International series, Kansas City favored over the LA Chargers by 3 points. Maybe you think Kansas City is going to open up their quest to get back on the mountaintop, to reclaim their throne as the best team in the NFL. Patrick Mahomes is going to be motivated after a blowout loss in the Super Bowl. I don't know. Maybe not. But maybe you like Kansas City -3 tonight against the LA Chargers. You could get that, or you could get a load of futures. Who do you think is going to win the Super Bowl? The Baltimore Ravens +700 favorites. Philadelphia Eagles also +700. Is it going to be one of those two birds, or is it going to be the Buffalo Bills finally breaking through? I'm going to bet against that, but it could be. Ultimately, my eyes just keep getting drawn to Kansas City +850 to win the Super Bowl in February. I'm always going to have a soft spot for Kansas City because Patrick Mahomes, to me, the best quarterback I've ever watched. So you can get all that and so much more over at FanDuel. And right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use all across the app. So if you're ready to play, download the FanDuel app right now by visiting FanDuel.com. That is FanDuel.com to get started. Again, FanDuel.com, or download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. Place your first $5 bet. If that bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. And like I said earlier, you can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, or anywhere else. And Mitchell asks, is this the big breakout year for Jalen Tyson? And I don't know if the big breakout year is the way that I would term it. But Mitchell, I do think Jalen Tyson is going to have an impact on the Cavs this season. I think that at the start of the year, he's going to be somebody that is in the rotation. He's going to be somebody that is playing probably somewhere between 15 and 22 minutes a night while Max Strus is recovering from the foot surgery that he needed at this point a little bit over a week ago as he works his way back over the course of this 3 to 4 month return to basketball activity timeline. So Jalen Tyson's going to get an opportunity. I don't know that this is going to be the big breakout because that opportunity is not going to be the opportunity. It's not as if the Cavs are saying, hey, Jalen, we need 20 a night from you. Go put the ball in the bucket a bunch. His opportunity is going to be as a role player. And I do think that he's got a good role player skill set. I think also that he believes he can be more than a role player. Whether or not that happens in the NBA, I'm not sure. I do think that's a good mentality for a role player to have, but I also do think that you kind of need to know your place a little bit. And this is not to say Jalen doesn't, but I look at this and say, okay, what is he going to be able to do with the opportunity that he will likely have at the start of the year? And does he do enough to, one, earn maybe a little bit more opportunity, or two, keep that opportunity when the Cavs are fully healthy? That to me is ultimately the question that I am most curious to see how Jalen Tyson answers it this year. Does he play well enough during this season while Max Strus is out for Kenny Atkinson to need to find him minutes, to need to keep him in the rotation if and when the Cavs are fully healthy? And I talked, about how rare it is for NBA teams to have their full rosters available. And I went on Locked On Pistons. I believe that show's coming out today. But I talked about how much health matters, right? And the health, Oklahoma City was the healthiest team last year. At the end, they won the title. Those two things certainly correlate. But I also think, okay, well, teams are going to have a lot of injuries during the year. But can Jalen Tyson do enough that when the Cavs are fully healthy and when they are at their best, he's going to be somebody that gets that opportunity, that has the chance to play 20 minutes a night and make a real impact? I think that is the best case scenario for Tyson. I think that is one of the best case scenarios for the Cleveland Cavaliers because ultimately they invested a first round pick in him last year. And him not doing much to contribute to winning, I don't want to say nothing because he did help at times, but it's not often that a first round pick as a rookie, it's not often that a rookie, no matter where you're picked, contributes to high level winning. It's difficult for a rookie to be a big part of a team that wins 60 plus games. It just doesn't happen very frequently. And the Cavs didn't get to where they wanted to get to in the postseason, but they were still really, really good. And I think that made life tougher for Jalen Tyson because had he been a rookie the year before, when the Cavs won 48 games and Evan Mobley missed all that time and Darius Garland missed all that time, Jalen Tyson, I think, would have played a lot. And we might have a different outlook on his career. But because the Cavs were so good last year, he didn't get that opportunity. And I think that makes the outlook a little bit more difficult. But I do think the opportunity will come this year. I don't know if it's going to be his big breakout, but I do think that he's going to make an impact of some size on the Cavs this year. Colin asks the question, how does this team become Mobley's on both sides of the floor? Well, Colin, I think as of now, the Cavs defensively are Evan Mobley's. He is the guy. Defensive player of the year, multi-time all NBA or all defense player. He is maybe not the best defender in basketball because you look at Victor Wembanyama, you looked at some other really, really great defenders. And if you want to say Evan Mobley is not the best defensive player in basketball, despite being the defensive player of the year, I can listen to it. But he is still a top 5 player in basketball on that end of the floor. He is like his floor is a top 5 defensive player. So with that, I say, okay, well, defensively, like the Cavs' identity is Evan Mobley. He is the guy. He is that. Offensively is much more complicated. And I think the one way I could answer this is I'm not sure, at least in the next couple of years, I'm not sure the Cavs' offensive identity is going to be Evan Mobley. And part of the reason why I'm not sure it's going to be Evan Mobley is because they've got Donovan Mitchell, and he is going to be their offensive identity. Now, Evan, I do think this year or next year will be the best player on the Cavs because he's just on that type of trajectory. He is awesome, and he's only getting better. But guess what? Donovan Mitchell, pretty great too. And I think that the thing that needs to happen for me to consider, like, who is the face of an offense, right? Like, there's no question that it's Donovan Mitchell in Cleveland. And the big reason why I have no question about it being Donovan Mitchell's in Cleveland is, one, when the Cavs need a bucket late, and maybe that's not the best example because Darius Garland does so much closing for this team, but Donovan Mitchell is the guy that everyone looks at and say, hey, we need a bucket. Maybe it's in a scoring lull in the third quarter. Go get us a bucket. Or the other team is on a 12-4 run. We need a bucket. The ball goes to number 45. And I also look and say, okay, well, who leads the team in field goal attempts? Last year, Donovan Mitchell in 71 games averaged 18.6 field goal attempts per game. Darius Garland was second with 15.7. Evan Mobley was third with 12.8. So there's a nearly 6-shot difference in terms of field goal attempts between Evan Mobley and Donovan Mitchell. And maybe that number, maybe Evan's never going to overtake Donovan in that, partially because Donovan shoots almost 9 threes a game, whereas Evan this year should be around 4.5. I think if the Cavs have their way, he'll be about 4.5 threes per game. And his numbers are going to grow. He's going to take, I would imagine, more than 13 field goals per game this year. I think the Cavs want him around 15, but Donovan's not going to come down that much. Now, the other number that I look at that could maybe start to open the conversation, because I don't think that conversation is just totally shut for Evan until he does lead the team in field goal attempts. Like, when that happens, I think you can say, okay, Evan Mobley's the face of this offense. You can say it about the defense, but when that happens, you can say it about the offense. But I also look at, okay, who leads the team in made field goals? And I'm not necessarily even going to talk raw points per game, but can Evan Mobley lead the Cavs in field goal made per game? Last year, Donovan Mitchell, as you would expect, led the Cavs with 8.2 made field goals per game. Darius Garland had 7.4. So despite the fact that Donovan took nearly 3 more attempts, Darius Garland was less than 1 made field goal behind him. Evan Mobley, again, took just under 6 fewer attempts than Donovan Mitchell per game, made 7.1 per game. At some point, can Evan eclipse Donovan in that category? I think that's possible. I think that is more likely than the attempts category. But ultimately, I think so much of this is going to be on the attempts and, of course, how many points per game do you score? Because this is such a results-oriented thing. Donovan Mitchell scored 24 points per game last year. Darius Garland was at 20.6, and Evan Mobley was at 18.5. I would imagine this year, Evan is going to be above 20. As you can tell, very high on what I expect out of Evan Mobley this year. I think that's about where he'll be, but I don't think he's going to overtake Donovan Mitchell. Maybe 3 or 4 years from now, it's a different story. I imagine it might be, but I just don't know that that's necessarily in the cards right now. Now, the plan for Lonzo Ball, is he going to play every single night? How many minutes should we expect? And how much say does Lonzo Ball have in that matter? Well, we'll talk about all that next right here on Locked On Cavs. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first watch today. If you want to help grow the show, the best thing that you can do, hit subscribe for me on that YouTube channel, hit the thumbs up button, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest from here over at Locked On Cavs. And Zobro, I am going to imagine that you are a very big Lonzo Ball fan specifically. I want to hear why so many commentators think Lonzo needs to not play back-to-backs, since he and any player in the NBA could get hurt at any time. That is a true thing. Does he need more recovery time than other players, or are the Cavs coaches just hedging their bets? So I do think that the back-to-back things, like I don't know for sure that Lonzo Ball is not going to play in back-to-backs. I would imagine he's not going to play 82 games this year. I kind of know for sure that's not going to happen. I would be stunned if Lonzo Ball plays 82 games this year. And Zobro, I think you probably would be too. But I think that the back-to-back thing for Lonzo specifically, because he's played, as I have mentioned several times, he has played 70 games in 4 years, which is not a lot of basketball. And I think that you can look at what he did last year where, he was able to get his minutes up. And the reason why he missed so much time last year was not because of his knee. It was because of his wrist. So I do think that is something that is absolutely worth mentioning and probably needs to be mentioned more. Because when we do think of Lonzo Ball's injury, we think of the knee issue that, for all intents and purposes, kept him off the floor for nearly 3 years. And I think that keeping him out of back-to-backs is doing that so that he can be at his best, right? Because if you look at, and I know I went through this earlier this week, if you look at the Cavs schedule, like what do the Cavs, or Lonzo Ball for that matter, have to gain from him playing a back-to-back in the month of November? Not much, right? Like everything about the Cavs is geared towards going on a deep postseason run, is geared towards really winning the title in June. That is what this team is about. That's what the purpose of this roster is for. And I think with Lonzo and Donovan too, and Evan Mobley, and this is, more than just a Lonzo Ball specific thing, but he's the easy one to bring up because he is the guy that has had the most significant injury stuff. But I look at this and say, well, he is somebody that they need to keep healthy. And does playing him in back-to-backs up that risk of injury? Because yes, you are right. Any NBA player can get hurt at any time. But I think adding injury risk is something that the Cavs would like to avoid. And I think playing him on consecutive nights certainly doesn't take away from the injury risk. Maybe it does add to. But I do think that this is more so about the Cavs wanting to ensure that they're at their best for the postseason. Lonzo Ball is probably going to play somewhere around 60 games this year. I expect him to be very good on both ends of the floor. And ultimately, that is what the Cavs want. Because if Lonzo Ball is going to miss time in the regular season for extra recovery, just to kind of make sure that he stays fresh, ultimately it's about, can he be helpful in the postseason? That's what all of this is for. So I do think that being careful with him, given his history, and truthfully, and I know you didn't ask about this, I don't think Darius Garland should play in back-to-backs this year. given his injury history, given his foot issue, I think that giving him back-to-backs, maybe not entirely off, and I don't know that they need to be entirely off for Lonzo Ball either, but I think that the Cavs can and should be selective with how they rest players. Last year, their guys, the minutes were not high. Donovan Mitchell played 31.4 minutes per game, which is, I believe, the lowest of his career. And Darius Garland was at 30, and Evan Mobley was at 30. Jared Allen was at 28. But Donovan played 71 games. Darius played 75 games. Evan played 71 games. Jarrett played 82 games. Their four core players, all played a lot of basketball games. Now, the role players all had guys that missed time. I mean, Ty Jerome and Sam Merrill were the two most durable of like that not starting group, where Sam played 71 and Ty played 70. Other than that, they had a lot of guys that were in and out of the lineup. But I look at this and say, I think all of those guys, if the Cavs can keep them around 65 to 70 games, that's probably the sweet spot, because ultimately that's going to be the thing that helps them get ready for the postseason, because truthfully, that is the thing that matters more than anything else. So thank you for making today's edition of Locked on Cavs your first listen, and thank you for making Locked on Cavs your first listen every single day. The show will be back on Monday. Sorry, did not have an episode on Thursday. Was feeling a little bit under the weather Wednesday night. Didn't have a great voice going, so that's why there was not an episode on Thursday, but happy to be back on Friday. And of course, we'll be back on Monday. Have a very fun episode, probably going to do in the middle to late next week. Our NBA top 100 list going to come out on Monday. So I will be discussing that, where Evan Mobley, Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, Jared Allen. Do the Cavs have 5 of the NBA's 100 best players? We'll talk about all that stuff straight on Monday right here on Locked on Cavs. So as we get out of here, do me a favor, hit that thumbs up button on YouTube if you are watching, or subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. And if you are on YouTube, help grow the channel. Hit subscribe and click the notification bell. You can find us on Locked on Cavs on YouTube, and I will be back on Monday talking more about the Cleveland Cavaliers.